just finished. And of course, immediately the contradictions are with us, and it's through contradictions that we actually get progress. So Dr. Nzimande, I'd like you to respond specifically to Eusebius's concept of unfreedoms, and particularly the focus on the economy, and the dichotomy between the fact that yes, the state is actually responsible for the lion's share of the problems because they have the monopoly on power. But we also have actors in the economy that have sat the 25 years out. And I'd like you to marry those two in getting to how unfree the economy still remains.
There are a number of things that I agree with from what Eusebius has said, Karima, but also there are a number of things that I disagree. Maybe let me pick up on those so that we have a good debate. Firstly, Eusebius is very interesting. You say the state almost doesn't matter on the one hand. You know, people can't just blame the state and so on. But then when it comes to blaming, then almost the biggest slice of the blame is on the state. That's usually the problem I have with liberals, I always say.
I was waiting for that.
When they've got this unclear thing about what the state. Yes, the state is not everything, but the state is important. That's why also we are considering that point. It can be important in some instances and in others. Secondly, by the way, we also need to critique the notion of just looking at the state. Let me tell you, Karima, you know, as the SACP, one way we are describing 1994 is that the ANC government was largely given an unfunded mandate. With a beautiful constitution, we're proud of it. I was part of those who negotiated it. But an unfunded mandate in terms of the things we have to address, poverty, inequality, and unemployment. Who was responsible for that? It was the apartheid state, yes, but it was the capitalist class in South Africa. What did the capitalist class do? From 1994, at the time when this ANC government needed all the resources, they delisted. You know, in the first 10 years of our democracy, about 20 to 25% of our GDP left the country and listed in the New York and the London stock exchanges by the very same people whose legacy the ANC government was supposed to be dealt with. So it's very important that we don't just look at the state, but also we look at capital, who were the biggest beneficiaries of the pre-1994 dispensation. That's why also I would differ with Eusebius. It's not just only the state, you know. It's primarily those who were accumulating beforehand. But no one disagrees with the fact that, as I have said, we still have lots of challenges. And the reason why the ANC and the SACP says a second phase of the transition, let's focus on economic transformation. I agree. You cannot, our freedom will always remain incomplete for as long as we are not economically emancipated. But then economic emancipation, you can't just put it solely on the state without also looking at who were the beneficiaries who also continue to be the primary economic beneficiaries at this point in time. So I just thought that it's important that I actually say that so that we are able to deal with it. Also, I hope, I must say this also, Karima, because some people abuse this freedom. That, you know, because we are free, we can say whatever we like, then we can say everything is possible anyhow. We call that populism. If I'm in front of workers, I tell workers you're going to earn 20,000 rands a week and they clap hands, they are happy. But I know that's actually it's not going to happen. That's abuse of freedom of expression. The point I'm trying to make is that these challenges that we have require us to understand that freedom is not an event.
Yeah.
Freedom is a process, but it's not only a process, it's a struggle, which is what is most important. How do we organize then to make sure, as I said at the beginning, that we complete this incomplete freedom? We do agree. But because it's incomplete, then we can't say all the things I've mentioned, they do not matter. That is the point I think that also needs to be made.
Okay, Dr. Nzimande, I want to ask you to come to the policy questions that you decided on that got us to where we are, but I'm not part of the debate, so I'm going to moderate in this debate, and I'm sure that is exactly where you would probably want to start. Serious your response.
Absolutely, Karima. You talk about contradictions. That's the kind of terminology that old Marxists love to use as an excuse for being inconsistent. So I want to point out a couple of inconsistencies. Dr. Blade Nzimande has got an awkward positionality in this debate. He is part of an ANC-led government that has signed up for neoliberalism, and he's also, probably so, and he's also a communist who presumably is not very proud of the economic cluster that have rolled out some very anti-poor, anti-black neoliberal economic policies of the past 25 years. I'm going to come to that in a second. I want to rebut the minister more directly. You see, where many young people and many opposition politicians, and again there's overlapping consensus, Dr. Nzimande, between us, we don't disagree completely, which is one of the reasons why you're one of my favorite Marxist interlocutors, Karima as well. But the areas where we disagree are important. So let me just say where I agree with you. The things that you list as achievements from the point of view of developmental outcomes are enormously important. And only a wealthy person or a glib middle-class suburbanite will not appreciate the difference that, for example, 7 million people being on social grants make to their existence. As someone who comes from a family of many poor people living under conditions of poverty, we shouldn't say poor people, it's not their identity, I appreciate that. Thank you for reducing the burden of that tax with the social grants in our communities and many of our families that need it. The 1.6 million beneficiaries of higher education, I appreciate that fact. The 7 million houses as well. But you know what they actually love to do? They like to list the things that are truisms about what they've done without the detail. 7 million people watching this debate on ENCA right now have had electrification, Karima. It means nothing when Eskom can't give you electricity. When you have energy insecurity because an SOE has been hollowed out because of looting sponsored by the ANC-led state, it doesn't matter that in theory I have a mud structure that could give me electricity to get my master's degree. However, the SOE is incapable of delivering. And that is the story of each one of the stats that he has given me. I can take another example. You talk about 17 million people being on social grants, many in my family. That is a fantastic thing. But tomorrow, if I die and I can't send remittances to the Eastern Cape or the Western Cape, many of them would not be self-sufficient because your grant system doesn't ask the question, how do we get them to be the authors of their own life rather than simply being subject of a benevolent state? So the story of social grants is double-sided. On the one side, it shows a government that is genuinely caring, that cares about deep inequality, but it's also in its design and detail, Dr. Nzimande, a story of a government that doesn't take seriously the question, how do we really emancipate people economically so that they cannot be dependent on the state habitually over many decades?
Dr. Nzimande, I think it's a fantastic point to get back to the question of policy choices.
Yes.
Now, you said that you had an unfunded mandate in your rebuttal to museums, and I agree because you inherited a bankrupt state. Alistair Sparks wrote a brilliant book about that. But you chose a set of policies at the time, despite that limitation, that didn't necessarily get you out of that created perhaps a greater debt burden. And one of it is, for example, the fact that we chose to have an arms deal over free compulsory education. So can you explain the policy choices of this unfunded mandate? So there's a recognition that the state was bankrupt, that you were new at governance, but you had the decisions to make. Why did you not choose free education in 1994?
Good luck, Dr. Nzimande.
No, we did. Interestingly enough, Karima, I was listening in early hours of this morning on 702 on a brilliant interview of Dr. Nelson Mandela the week after the Shell House shootings. It was excellent. He was articulating 10 years of compulsory education. We did that. You know, we said first 10 years is compulsory, and large parts of it actually, by the way, was free. Not all of it, I do agree. There were still very expensive schools that were actually charging fees, but we've progressively said, even in those schools, children who come from poor families cannot actually be excluded. I've said, if we look at the past, by the way, this thing of only talking about the past 9 years, it's fine, but it's not adequate. Because there were mistakes also. I'm not defending the last 9 years, don't mislead me. But there were things that were done wrong also prior to that. One of those was the adoption of the gear policies. But it was a struggle. You know, that's how we understood We understand it as communism. You said this as criticizing that I've got this Janus face because I'm a communist and as ANC. It's not. We understand exactly that we're in a broad movement. There are always struggles inside that movement itself about the policies, and they are democratically decided. And then those policies that we will continue to struggle. We managed to win the debate at the end. That it was wrong. Even ESCOM. By the way, ESCOM comes from that era. We knew in 1997 that we had to invest, in our coal-powered stations and so on. We didn't because there was a plan to actually privatize most of the state. That is part of the problem that we face. I don't want to deny that part of the black house is because of the theft that has happened at ESCOM. That's at least also we have a president like President Ramaphosa, who has actually stood up and said, where we were wrong, we will admit that we were wrong and we are actually going to act as he's actually acting now. And we hope that all South Africans will actually support that so that we are able to deal with all these problems. So the issue of policies, what we need, I think we did try to do some corrections. We must not rule out of this. For instance, between 2009 and 2014, R1 trillion was invested into infrastructure. That was very important because that cushioned us in many instances. But also must remember that our economy, we can't just also only be blaming individuals, has two key constraints. It's global, that we are operating, we are a subsidiary economy in a global economy, which it has got crisis, has got implications for us. We also were in the SADC region. South Africa is not an island. Part of these problems we are talking about, xenophobia and so on, are just manifestations of a deeper problem. That SADC actually has become a labor reservoir for South African capital in the main. So all those are external factors that we have to factor in if we are to then develop policies that are actually appropriate so that we understand the totality of our context.
You see this, I'm going to give you a chance to rebut some of the issues and then I'm going to open the floor for discussions. I'm sure many of you have really interesting questions. I myself have interesting questions, but I will keep those things to myself and allow the debate to continue. But you see this, please pick up on some of the issues that you disagree with or agree with Dr. Zimandi on.
Yeah, Dr. Nizamanda said that what we need now is a recognition, and certainly that the ANC as a movement recognizes that we need, quote, a second more radical phase. And I've got a problem with that idea because there was nothing that stopped the ANC simultaneously dealing with civil and political rights, entrenching them from 1994, and at the same time dealing with an economy that is exclusionary, that is unjust, that is racist. So this idea of we need 50 years to deal with one set of issues and then women's rights, gay rights can come later and then maybe poverty down the line, that's nonsense. The historical burden that you have as a government is to simultaneously and irreducibly deal with the complexity of challenges that you have. And I want to keep it practical. Dr. Nzimande and I both like theorizing, but for sake of a focused debate, take the example of MTN and Vodacom and the connection between a lack of access to cheap data and our civil and democratic rights that we want to entrench, Karima. The connections are now clear. You can't be a successful job seeker in 2019 if you don't have data. You can't be an informed citizen taking Karima's participatory model of democracy seriously and acting it if you don't have data. And yet, when I talk about the monopoly that the state has on policy formulation and lawmaking, nothing has stopped the ANC-led government from deciding to be anti-poor, to be pro-poor, pro-working class, and regulating how corporates like MTN and Vodacom behave in terms of their business model, siphoning off super profits, and we in effect end up cross-subsidizing cheap data on the rest of the continent. That's what I'm talking about. Dr. Nzimande is disingenuous to then talk about, well, some of this has to do with externalities, as if the global economy explains our own lack of ability or willingness, rather, because it's about political will, to go after our own companies. When he talks about what are corporate citizens doing, they're not in this debate. You know that if the CEOs were here, you and I talk to them all the time as political analysts behind closed doors, we take them on for their own agentive power that they have and they don't use to make the world a better place. But you are here as a representative of the state. It's mind-boggling to me that the government welcomes the Competition Commission saying that these companies are effectively be anti-poor in their behavior when you have a monopoly in the state to do something about it. The same with the bread cartel, the construction industry. So when I critique the state, I'm talking about the direct constitutional power that you have and that you have not used to make sure that we are truly economically free.
Who would have thought a liberal would argue that capital needs to be disciplined, and you see this just did that. So yes, we are indeed dealing with contradictions, and I disagree with him. I do think contradictions do get us forward. Dr. Nzimande, a quick response from you, and then we're going to open it to our listeners. I just want to remind those of us who are watching at home, you are of course watching a live debate at the Apartheid Museum. We're talking about a quarter of a century of freedom, and we're evaluating the quality of that freedom and whether we are indeed truly free. Dr. Nzimande, quickly.
It's interesting what the sort of admission by Eusebius actually. He says we talk to the captains of industry behind closed doors. Well, we're talking to them, and to us as government, we're talking to us in the public, engage them in public. So it says what I'm saying, sort of this liberal diving. Blame the state, keep the others actually to not blame them. I can say it so far as Vodacom and MTN. We set up the competition commission, and it's doing its work. That's why we should welcome it. And I can say now, without fear of contradiction, we are going to deal with these big monopolies. We are going to bring down the price of data, for instance.
But what stopped you? What stopped you in a century?
We have started doing these things and all these measures that we have. We are prepared to consider, yes, we could have done more. We did not do more for a variety of reasons. I don't want also to be seen to be looking too much backward, but also corruption really has been a very big factor in our ability. It's like this thing of changing ministers every second night. I'm not arguing to be appointed,
But Ramaphosa, but it didn't. They started in the evening.
There are mistakes that we committed. On the front, for instance, of the digital age. We are in the dark ages in South Africa at the moment. Not least because we wanted to push very selfish, narrow interest in this space at the expense of radical transformation. But what I'm saying now is that watch this space. We're going to bring down the price of data. We're going to advance much quicker than we've been able to do in terms of digital transformation.
You can see that the minister is in election mode. Vote is a couple of days from now, so we're going to hold Dr. Nzimande to that promise and say, but let's use this opportunity to open the floor for discussions. We've got roving mics moving around. So can I have the first 4 hands, please? And can I get the mics to the people? So we'll start with women first. We are the majority of the electorate, so we are going to give women an opportunity to take their rightful place. Then we have, in fact, 2 more women here on this side, and then we have a gentleman here in front. So those will be our first 4 participants. Please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Eleanor Williams, and I'm not representing an organisation or entity. I'm here in my capacity as a private individual. And my question is for Eusebius. You have spoken at length so far about the ANC and the government being anti-black and anti-poor. So what I would like to understand from you is, to what end? What is the end game of such an approach? What's the strategy behind it? Please elaborate more on your thoughts on that.
Thank you so much. I'm going to take the other questions, then we will take them in that order. So we'll remind ourselves that Eusebius has to talk about the end game as the answer to the first question. Can I have the second respondent, please?
Hi, my name is Sister Thomani. This question is for Braden Nzimande. I voted when the first time in 1994, and I think we were promised that we will get, we will be moved out of the match boxes. But today, when I go back home to the Val, it's even worse than when I voted. We were made to clean the streets when Mandela came out of prison. But today, the streets are a mess. People are falling sick. The clinics that we have, that we're functioning well, they are now dilapidated because the government, which is the ANC, which is running the country, is not doing anything about it. You run the policies of this country. I think you can do a lot to change it. However, you're not doing anything. You're campaigning like you're doing now, campaigning for elections. You want us to vote for the ANC. You are also sending us a corrupt mandate, a bankrupt mandate that you were sold in 1994 when you drafted the constitution. So what are you going to do to change it? And why should I vote for the ANC? Because the ANC hasn't done anything. Actual fact, it's done a little. You can't say to me, if I ate pap and milk when I was young, now that I'm eating pap and meat, I must be excited. That means nothing to me.
My name is Didi Roma Khashena, and I have a comment rather to Dr. Nzimande. First, I don't think it's honest to say he's a communist. We can debate that afterwards. I really don't think you're a communist at all. And then, secondly, I think I want us to move away from describing freedom with reference to apartheid. I was only a few months old when we voted, so I don't know what life is under apartheid. So me and my white counterpart have to have the same idea of what freedom means. And in that respect, I think the government fails dismally because they tell us about electricity. That's basic. We should have done that in the first 5 years. We can't be talking about electricity now when we've got so many problems, I can't even list them now. So I want you to then talk freedom outside of oppression because I was never oppressed. So I'm not overly grateful for the right to vote because I was born and found that we already have that.
Let me start with Eusebius. The first question was about what is the end game, to what end do you believe the ANC adopted the policy positions that it did?
Thank you for your question. It's both a wonderfully clear question but also layered. Some people will take it as a rhetorical support of Blade because they may think, I'm coming, just listen, because they may think that surely there's no self-interest in a set of policies that are anti-poor and anti-black. So let me be blunt. The end game is very simple. Eating at the trough until you explode like a fat pig. That's what it's about. It is our turn to eat. The ANC has a moral dilemma because it doesn't know how to deal with a moral rot at its core. It is anti-poor and anti-black not by design, but as a consequence of self-serving politics.
You've got a lot of defending to do. Let me just remind you quickly of the questions. The one is that you have to explain your communism. Now we know the communist world has many versions of communists, but you can decide which one you want to address. But I think the key question here is government is responsible, and you've acknowledged that in the beginning. So maybe pick up on the fact that many people feel that they don't have to clap hands because we can vote, because democracy is about more than voting.
Karina, well, I don't want to debate whether I'm a communist or not. The young lady has got a right to have views. You are entitled. I disagree with you, okay? I think you're wrong. Just like you think I'm not a communist, I also think you're wrong. So let's leave it there. We can pursue that debate at another stage, at another time. Eusebius, I think that you can criticize the ANC and its government, but to say it's anti-poor and anti-black, it's completely wrong. I disagree. All these measures I was mentioning, almost all of them exclusively, they were actually changing the conditions of poor people, poor black people. I can understand the youth which says you take electricity for granted. The reason why you take electricity for granted is because of the ANC government. The reason why we are going into electricity and better services, it's because of the ANC government. Those of us, of course, who never had electricity, we can see that the difference is big. What you take for granted didn't come for free and did not come cheap. And it's important also, by the way, for young people to bother themselves about understanding our history. You can't just dismiss the history. The Cubans put it nicely. Any nation that does not know its history does not have a future. It's very important that we actually bear that in mind. And apart from that, you will find no other organization, no matter what its witnesses, better than the ANC on pro-youth policies. Let me just take one thing. Our youth was almost getting devastated on HIV and AIDS. We've actually rolled out what is the largest antiretroviral program in the world, and we've saved the lives of young people. And in fact, we've even increased the life expectancy over the last 10 years in particular, because of the increased provision on that. NSFAS, no one can actually say, well, what does it mean to me because I'm born now? Yes, we are born now, and we are getting what we are getting because there's been the National Student Financial Aid Scheme. Many students would not, many of them, most of them, by the way, NSFAS beneficiaries, are the first to be university or college graduates in the history of their families. That's pro-youth. It's young people. Our schooling system today is not the past. The fact that there are hungry children today is not the past. There are hungry children today. The fact that we provide 1 meal a day in our poor schools, and it's often the only meal, by the way, for many of these poor children, not least because of your capitalist class, by the way, you said, yes. It's very convenient to just blame the state and the ANC, because then by default you end in a very problematic position of being an apologist for capitalist exploitation in this country, which still remains the principal determinant of poverty and unemployment in this country. So I think that it's important that we actually say that it may not mean much to you. You may be coming from the middle class, but for millions of poor people, I'm not here because I'm campaigning. I thought it's always nice to debate with you, Serbia. He's my favorite liberal to debate. And for us as Marxists, it's very easy to tackle liberals sometimes. But I'm here because I think this is an important issue. And it's an important debate. Sometimes, what is good about this debate, by the way, it allows us to get a little bit deeper into the issues rather than the town hall debates where people often are more insulting each other than actually analyzing things. So that's what I would say for now, but I'll come back on other issues.
Just one quickly. Okay, I want to be very clear as we expand this debate, and I know we've still got plenty of time. I don't, and I'm not trying to be friendly to Blade because we like each other as interlocutors. One part of this debate is a national debate, is a debate about the ANC. One part of this debate is a debate about the state. And I'm going to be a bit dystopian, and if there's time later we can unravel it. I'm afraid the situation is more dire than what I've said. There's a poverty of ideas how to deal with our unfreedoms in our body politic. If we were talking about the EFF and the DA, I've got sharp critiques of them as well. What they have an advantage, where they have an advantage over the ANC is that the ANC is the incumbent government. So of course there's a track record for us to examine very closely. But at the heart of our unfreedom is one concept: racial injustice. And there isn't one major political party in our country that have really tackled that fully and delivered particularly millions of poor black people from their injustices that we experience in our lived experiences on a daily basis. The EFF does well rhetorically, but their behavior and praxis tell you something else. The DA has got a poverty of ideas when it comes to inequality, racism, economic lack of democracy in corporate South Africa, and the corporates themselves do not give a damn about the moral duties they have to make a difference. So we are right to ask tough questions of the ANC-led government. I won't stop doing that. But all the sources of power, I'm afraid, have collectively let all of us down.
All right, I'm going to open the floor for another set of questions. I've got one hand over here. I've got another hand over there. So these two gentlemen over here. This gentleman was in the first round, so he didn't get an opportunity. So can we please get the mic to him? In fact, I'd like to start with the gentleman with the scarf, and then I'm going to take one more hand. We're going to have mini rounds, so when I have my 4 hands, put your hands down and we'll come back to you. Okay? Can we have our first participant? Can I have a mic, please?
Hello. Yes, my name is Bassam Hussein, Palestinian diplomat. I am here on behalf of our ambassador and the embassy staff to see happy Freedom Day for South Africa and South African people, and as well as to appreciate the decision of the Minister of Jericho of downgrading the embassy in Tel Aviv. as well as we acknowledge the role of Communist Party beside the ANC to take this historical decision. As well as we know, in the past 4 or 5 years, the Israeli Apartheid state bans Comrade Nizamandi for visiting Palestine. But I hope he will be the first visitor in free Palestine. Thank you.
My name is Tamarle Kota, and I'm speaking in my personal capacity.
Your question, please.
One of the things that David has spoken about, he didn't speak about one thing, the land. And do you know why he's sweeping it under the carpet? It's because he knows that the ANC government has failed to deal with the land question. I would want to align myself with Advocate Tamarle Kota's view that our constitution provides for expropriation of land without compensation. Our problem is not the constitution. Our problem is the ANC government to implement the constitution. Not the constitution, the ANC government. But you are sweeping it under the carpet because you know that the ANC has failed. And I want to say this in conclusion, that the ANC is the Mutengisi of black people. Thank you. What?
He's speaking in his personal capacity. I'm just curious. And being a reporter.
Not all the quotas are related.
Thank you, Minister. My name is Prince Marole. I actually have 2 questions for Minister Blade Nzimande. The first is about data. I'm a young black South African who I know for a fact that data has come to a point where it's sort of like water. It has become a need, especially for us to search jobs and everything. Yeah, you talk about the competition commission that they are talking to MTN and talking to Vodacom, but we know they are sort of like begging them to reduce the price of data. We don't want them to reduce the price of data. We don't want them to beg them. We want them to say, this is a fact. Nigeria is selling, is getting data at a cheaper rate than South Africa. The government should step in and say, this is what needs to be done. We're not negotiating with them, we're not rubbing backs with them. The government, we're asking them and we're saying, please put an end to MTN and Vodacom. My second question is about, sorry, I'm a bit nervous.
It's okay, you don't sound nervous at all. Go ahead.
Feel free.
Okay. My second question is, you mentioned something about abusing freedom of speech, and you said, but this is something that politicians are very, very good at. I was listening to Julius Malema the other day on your senior show, and he's spoken about growing the economy from 0.7% to 6% in the first 2 years, and then after that it's going to move to 10%. What do you say to people like that or politicians like that? Isn't that the abuse of speech and the abuse of freedom of speech, like you say?
Can we have the last question and then we will get our respondents to respond? All right, quickly.
Thank you. My name is Dima from Deep Group. I have a question for Dr. Blade Nzimande. Dr. Nzimande, you mentioned something about NEFSAS. Yes, NEFSAS helps disabled students from poor backgrounds. But what's the point of the basic education for dropping the standard of education, the matric level to 30%, and year after year there's congratulations, 80% to 90%. They get to tertiary and they struggle. And NEFSAS will go on paying year after year for students who don't pass because they were pushed to get that 30%. How are we going to solve that? And now they are unemployed with graduate, with degrees. Please help education. That's my question. Thank you.
All right, put some questions. Just a reminder to our viewers at home, this is the live debate coming from the Apartheid Museum in Johannesburg. We are talking about the quality of freedom, the quarter of a century after the democratic breakthrough in 1994. We're examining exactly how far we've come, what went wrong, and hopefully soon we are going to be talking about how we are going to go forward. Dr. Nzimande, you've got most of the questions,
yes.
but I'd like you CVS to come in as well. So I'll hand over to the two of you, but let's start with the question on the land. The fact that the person who asked the question said the Constitution actually doesn't need changing, that the ANC, and this is my interpretation, was populist in deciding to change that clause because you didn't need to. The Kgalema High report actually found that it was the implementation of the policy that was the problem and that was the hindrance to people accessing land. So could you start by answering why, for example, the government has never brought a test case before the Constitutional Court to actually show that there can be expropriation without compensation, without changing the Constitution?
Yeah, but I must start by thanking the Palestinian ambassador and quote our late leader, Comrade Madiba, and that's why, by the way, our freedom becomes important again. That our freedom will never be complete until the Palestinian people are free. And I want to look, we have already admitted that we didn't push far enough on the issue of land. But to say we've done nothing about that is incorrect either. It's just throwing a political point against the ANC. It's nice. I'll act as a punchline. That's okay. We put this issue of land in the Constitution. We fought for that. It's very important that it's there, it's in the Constitution. We have admitted that we didn't push hard enough, even in terms of the existing clause. Because with the existing clause, we could have gone far enough to test even the issue of expropriation without compensation. And it's not bad to admit where we've actually had weaknesses. Because we're an organization that's confident of ourselves, we can say to our people, we didn't go far enough there, we could have, you know. But we are saying now we're going to do that. We are going to be pushing much more radically as part of, unfortunately, what Eusebius disagrees with. We have to be radical, Eusebius, on the issue of land as well as on other matters. We are going to be, and even taking some of the land without compensation. But that must not mean land grabs that are unplanned, as the EFF is actually saying. We are against unplanned land grabs. I must, by the way, remind you, I'm not Julius Malema, I'm Blade Nzimande. And there is a big difference between the two of us, you know. I don't disagree with him. They don't have solutions for this country. They shout slogans. Because if you are not responsible for government, you can go and campaign and say anything you want because no one is going to hold you responsible because they are not going to win an election. So I think that it's important that I do say that. I disagree with Julius even when he was in the ANC. He's wearing a red color now, but he hates communists like nobody's business. But I don't care. We don't like populists like him either, so the feeling is mutual. So that's actually not important. Let me say something on education. I don't think it's correct to say the ANC has dropped the standard of education. If you say by expanding education we've dropped the standard, that's wrong, it's incorrect. We've expanded opportunities for education in this country. You know, the number of kids today who complete schools, it's chalk and cheese with what was happening in 1994, for instance. You know? And we have improved the quality of education. It's not enough, but we have improved it. Let me tell you where the snag has been, which we've begun in the last 2 years to address. We have an academically oriented education system. Everybody must go and do an academic matric and go to university. That's wrong. Now, what the Department of Basic Education has started doing is to open up the vocational path so that kids who do not want to go the academic route, they can go and become plumbers, electricians, skills that we actually need. That is where the big problem has been. If you don't like the ANC government, it's fine, it's your right, but don't accuse the ANC government of things that it has not done. It's not correct that we have not improved the standard of education, unless expanding education is being equated to actually lowering of standards. Yes, our youth, they battle at university for a whole range of reasons, not because we've dropped the standard of education. Where do they come from? If you go to Babanango, where my wife comes from, you can't go west in a rural area, and you expect that child to perform the same as a child from Parktown Boys High here, or Parktown Girls High. So those are socio-economic conditions that we have to tackle, because our youngsters do not come from the same socio-economic conditions. That will tell when you actually go to university. You know, that those who come from, who have been using computers, you know, who do not think that the mouse of a computer is a rat, then there is actually going to be big differences. And we have done a lot on that score. We have not said that we've done everything. There is still a lot that still needs to be done. That's why we are saying to people, I'm not campaigning, Karen. Vote the ANC, because the others are not going to take you anywhere. Also, the ANC, we have got freedom to criticize us. We will listen to you. But also, we will engage where we think that it's unfair criticism.
You see here?
I think Dr. Nzimande wants us to lower our standards in terms of what we expect of the government. And if you set your sights low enough, you'll never be unhappy with the ANC. Like, there's a difference between expansion and quality. Expanding access to basic education doesn't tell me anything about whether or not the average 10-year-old, 15-year-old can read with comprehension. Expanding access to mathematics as a subject doesn't tell me whether someone is actually agile and happy to take a job in the knowledge-based economy that requires them to be numerate and to be very, very comfortable with numbers. Telling me how many people are able to access tertiary education means nothing if our lecturers have to spend the first year to 2 years, Dr. Nzimande, doing remedial teaching to close the gap between basic education and university, because the students they get, by the way, including from Parktown boys and Parktown girls, because they're not spared in the subjects in the suburbs, are not actually ready for university because of a lowering in the quality. So I think you are disingenuous in your response to the question from the audience. We appreciate expanding access, but you can't run away from the question of quality.
All right.
Can I just quickly correct this in a minute? You know, we are not saying that we have reached the quality we need. What I'm disagreeing with is to say we've lowered the quality. That's just not true.
Okay, on that note, we bid our television audience goodbye. Thank you for staying with us. Here at the Apartheid Museum is getting lit. We continue with our conversation. So sorry you guys are missing out at home, but we'll take some more questions from the floor. Can I have the next 4 set of hands? But I'm going to make a condition. I want the young people in the uniforms who have made the time to come to have the first opportunity. So can I have 4 young people in uniform put the questions? The rest of the audience, I'll come to you in the next round. So we're going to start over here. Most of the young people who are in uniform are over here. Can we have the mics, please? Okay, where's the other 4? So I've got, okay, so there's the 4. It's the lady in front, the gentleman with the glasses on the side, and the 2 at the back. So go for it.
Okay, good day to everyone. My name is Kenny. I'm from Queen's High School. Firstly, I would like to say I want the ANC to stop sugarcoating things. Because every time it reaches towards elections, we hear them telling us about better education, better housing, better everything. But when we're done voting for them, we end up losing greatly after that. I go to school every day and they say, oh no, there will be freedom, whatever, whatever. But I go to school and I feel like I'm caged. Why can't we have children saying they want to be plumbers and stuff? Because they, in their mindset,
they think that being a lawyer, a doctor, is what's fitting and benefiting for them. But, well, my main thing is ANC should not try and make things look right and good when everything's actually wrong. Everything they do all the time, it does not work. Because I'm seeing every day, you see more beggars on the street, you see more children out there that are unemployed, nobody has a job, and then what like guarantees me that if I'm done matric this year, next year I'm going to have a job? Because I'm scared that I'll go to varsity, come out with a degree, or have honors and stuff, but I have nowhere to go. So what do I say to my mom who's been paying school fees for how many years? So is that all going to go to waste? Is that what the ANC is trying to tell me? That's all I have to say.
Happy Freedom Day to everyone. My name is Mama Kheli from in Soweto. My question is freedom the dilapidated classes and poor infrastructure in our schools? Because I heard Mr. Blade talking about the expansion of education, but the quality they have not lowered. But they come to our schools to advocate for their parties and renovate maybe 2 or 3 classes for television, and they leave.
Major from Queen's High School. I've got 2 questions to ask. First for freedom, and one thing that I quoted from Blake's money. The first one says, was that quarter of a century of freedom ever valid, for no actions were ever made? The second one, if you said that a nation that doesn't know its history has no future, but I want to ask, if that history is being repeated, what future is there?
Good day, everyone. My name is Mr. from St. Barnabas College, a grade 11 student. Now, my question, which is more of a statement, is directed to Mr. Blade. After all this argument and after this debate, when students go home, why should we vote? We're given a choice to speak, we're given a choice to voice our different opinions, but we just want to ask, what more can you say to motivate the thousands of young people out there who are not motivated when it comes to voting? You state that people are registering to vote, but when I look around my community, people prefer not voting because they see absolutely no change besides in the suburbs. And one more statement I'd like to mention is that, can we please stop measuring the economy of how good people are doing and focus more on the students who need your help to raise the economy into a better place that we're supposed to be in by now? Thank you very much.
We've got some fantastic questions. Dr. Nzimande is going to answer some of them. And like I said, Eusebius is going to be brought in. Do feel free, as I said, to be as comfortable as you are. ENCA, I work for them, but they always leave at the best part. So that was the quote of the day. And we decided to wrap, but that's me and my bosses fighting in public. I just think that it's so important that we get everybody to speak, and I'm really grateful for the young people who have the confidence and the resilience to actually ask the tough questions of the adults, because it's not easy to ask a minister a question. It's not easy to ask your father a question or your mother a question, or to even disagree with them or to stand up to them. So I salute you for firstly coming on this Freedom Day. It means you take your country seriously, you take your future seriously, and thank you very much for the questions that you are asking.
Questions, you might as well just retire yourself. No, let me agree with you. Thanks for these questions. They are very important questions. And it shows that our young people who are still in school are thinking. which is good for our future. I must just say that. It's not patronizing, it's true. The levels of the questions that we are asking. I do want to start because I did not make just this one example. For the first time in the history of this country, which doesn't start in 1652, goes way before that. For the first time ever in the last 2 years, engineering graduates, the majority became black for the first time. Engineering students, for the first time they became the majority. Talk about lower inequality. It's never happened before. Because engineering has largely been for white students and white graduates. So that is very important. It's just one of the many examples actually that we can be able to mention. The numbers of students we are taking to the vocational and education and training colleges, because we want to diversify opportunities for young people, including improving prospects for jobs. On the issue of jobs, by the way, is that yes, indeed, jobs is a huge challenge, but to simply blame the state is not correct. It's just not correct, because the private sector and the capitalist class has been on an investment strike in this country. That's why the president has been very, very focused on mobilization of both domestic and foreign investments, because South African companies have not been investing. So it's very one-sided to just look at the state and not look at the trillions of rands that are in the hands of the private sector. I would like, Karima, in the future that we come here just to debate the private sector on its own. And I'm not saying the state must not be criticized or that as government there is nothing to do. What does the ANC now say? Very important thing. For entry-level jobs, we are no longer going to require any experience from young people to join the public service. The reason why we are doing that, we are saying, we know that you get asked for experience all the time. We are taking it upon ourselves as government that we're going to give you that experience when you are already working right inside there. As part of addressing this problem that our young people leave schools or colleges or universities, they actually do not get jobs. So it's very important that I also say that we have the YES program that has been started by President Ramaphosa. I was very pleased to see yesterday, Nedbank is saying it's going to be providing work experience to thousands of young people. It's the first time that any bank has actually committed to this. This is being done because government is saying, much as we cannot be blamed only exclusively for no jobs, but we are actually doing all we can to be able to create conditions for employment of young people. On infrastructure, just to give you some information, over the last 4 years, we've been opening a new school every week. Every week we've been opening a new school. It's a pity that I don't know what questions you're going to be asked. I was going to show you not half an hour, a 5 minutes thing about the schools that we are building that have changed the lives of our people and of our youngsters, especially in rural areas. Very, very radical. We committed to that. We're not going to run away from the fact that yes, we still have pit toilets in some schools. The president has said that's a priority. We must just make sure that we no longer have pit toilets. We are committed to actually doing that. And we can behold to that as some of the things that we are doing. I think that the statement on history is very interesting. The problem is not repeating history. We are not teaching history at our school. That's one weakness. We're not teaching it at all. In fact, our young people, as I've said, and I mean it, they battle, they study, they go and do their own research, but we have not been actually teaching history to our young people in this country. And a country that doesn't do that, it's a problem. And we don't want to teach our history because we want to give you propaganda. We want to give you facts and to judge for yourself so that you have a better appreciation, even for your own future going forward, to know where we come from, which is something that, so it's not repetition of history that's a problem, it's that there's no history, largely, that we are actually telling. That is the big issue that we actually have. Now, we have what we believe, Karima, is a very student-focused program. It's not perfect at all levels. From basic things like having a meal at school, that's actually focusing on the student, because we want our students to actually succeed. The National Student Financial Aid Scheme has been increased by billions of rands because we don't want our students to go hungry in our colleges and in our universities. There still are who are going hungry, but we are reducing those numbers. We are actually putting in a lot of money, billions of rands that we are continuing to put in, and we are committed to actually expanding. But let me end with this point. I don't want also to fall into this trap that government is like a wheelbarrow. That's why this idea of delivery needs to be problematized. And then people are sitting back, what is government doing? What are you doing as South African citizens? What are you doing? Actually, because government on its own is not going to be able to actually realize many of these problems. Why are young people not marching in the street? March to Vodacom and MTN and join you and say the cost of the calls must go down and the cost of data must go down. Because even ourselves as government, we need the power and the pressure of South Africans. So this liberal notion, the state must do everything, but when the state does something at the same time, we are doing too many wrong things and so on. South Africans themselves must stand up, like the 1976 generation. That youth generation stood up and refused to be victims and say we are going to change our education system. We are where we are today precisely because of that activism.
Grandma, like you, I also wish that ENCA was still broadcasting so that the entire nation can hear a whole minister asking young people to tackle a corporate. For a very simple reason. Because if you actually devolve the legal powers that you have, that we do not have as communities, we'll do a hell of a lot more than you are doing. Give it to us. Give us the monies that you have in the fiscus. Let us think about how to disperse it. Let us think about what hurdles to put up so that an H. Makashule doesn't steal from the poor in the Free State. We'll do it philanthropically. So it's rhetorically useful to ask civil society, what are you doing? But I meant literally what I said in my opening statement, that you have a monopoly on power. These young people do not control the criminal justice system. They do not control the fiscus. They do not collect taxes. They do not sit in parliament and enact policies. They don't have the economists and the other regulators at the Competition Commission on their phone books. You do. You must tackle them, not society. But I want to come back and give the minister what he rightly, and I'm really I am flattered that he had said so, that he wanted a complex debate that you don't always get in town halls. So there's 4 issues that beyond the questions, Karima, maybe I can put just by way of extra content for us to tackle. Firstly, the idea of history. The young person that made the remark about what's the point of history if you're going to repeat it. It is a profoundly important quote to a bottom camera. Maybe we can re-engineer that moment on my phone later, because I really think it should go viral. It is profoundly important. And I tell you why. I'm currently reading a really awesome book that's worth reading slowly by Judge Dennis Davis and Advocate Michelle LaRue, and it's called Lawfare. Those are 2 of the most progressive lawyers that you can get in the country. And with painful qualification, because they know when misunderstood what a Helen Ziller will do with their message. They talk about the echoes of history in our courts and the way in which before 1994 lawfare was used to repress black people. And then I read very excellent progressive social scientists, fellow political scientists, political commentators, and it's taken me a while as a liberal, a left-leaning liberal. I'm going to come to that in a moment. I always laugh when you swipe at me, but liberalism is as complex as Marxism. And as a liberal, there's a certain terminology that left-wing academics have used for a while now that support my idea that you are anti-poor and anti-black. That is not a rhetorical swipe. I'm not into rhetoric, Minister. You know me well by now. And what they talk about is the discontinuities and the continuities with the past. And it's similar to what comes up in this book by Michelle LaRue and Dennis Davis, which is to say the following. I at least refer to us as a liberal constitutional model that we've adopted, and I think it's a good thing. I think as a liberal, the Constitution is pro-poor. The state may not always be, but the constitutional text is. And yet there are many left-leaning academics that have far better lefty credentials than me, the liberal, who describe the country we live in today as neo-colonial. Those are people who are shy. They don't seek retweets. They don't seek fame. They don't want to come on my show because they prefer being in the academy. They are genuinely making a conceptual argument for why neoliberalism, neo-colonialism is a more accurate description of the status quo than even talking about a post-apartheid society. And what they mean by that is exactly what that young learner captured when he talks about the echoes of history. And so I think, Minister, if you really want to be intellectually honest, you've got to grapple with this. I'll stop here, Karima. You've got to grapple with the temptation to think that when a fellow black person accuses the ANC government of being anti-black or anti-poor, that he simply wants a round of applause. When I say that, it pains me as someone who comes from a poor community. It pains me as someone who hates white supremacy. It pains me as someone who thinks that the DA, our biggest opposition party, doesn't get the black experience in this country to say that the ANC is also anti-poor and anti-black. And I think the question you must grapple with is, if I were to be generous to my interlocutor, why might Eusebius, who is not a white supremacist, use such a painful description of the government of which I'm a part?
All right. On that note, please ask for another round of questions. Minister, I'm going to give you an opportunity. I'm just going to try and get some hands so that we can get a balance. So I'm going to take two hands from here, the gentleman in the pink shirt and the lady with the glasses, and I'm going to take Nicholas, because hopefully we can capture some of that stuff on camera again, so I'm being very deliberate about that. And then I'm going to take the hand that's the tallest at the back there. So the four speakers, you know who you are. Please come here. And as I said, we want to get as many people to participate. As you can see, the questions are substantive, they're not inflammatory, they're not without conceptual understanding of some of the complexities. So please be precise, be concise, and be aware that we need to give everyone a chance.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Mario. To Dr. Blakey Zimande. I just want to give my opinion that the state tender system, the intention was good, but unfortunately it has produced many people who are supposed to be business people, but they're afraid to be business people because they register on the database of government, they sit back and they demand jobs or tenders from government. So I think it's about time that the state needs to capacitate young people, and those young people should be given a practical example materials, and they should be paid and employed by the state. We can negotiate the issue of whether it's going to be short or long term, but unfortunately the tender system has resulted in many deaths of many people because everyone is looking up on being a business person, but they do not go out to market themselves. Minister, what is your opinion on the issue of consequence management vis-a-vis good governance? The reason why I'm raising this is because as a person who's working in the state, there are clear policies which state that as an official, I'm not allowed to do business with the state. But unfortunately, there is nothing which says families of politicians are also not allowed. And the truth is busy coming out on a daily basis. And lastly, Minister, as a communist, I would like to challenge you to put pressure on government on one thing that is very sensitive to me. I think by today, the government should have been able to put pressure on different banks to say to them, to benefit black people, at least when we started off with the new dispensation, one thing that we should have agreed on was that at least people should pay home loans for only a period of 10 years. That could have gone a long way to empower black people because the other 10 years, as now is 20 years, then the black person will be able to be taking that money and investing it in something else. Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Karabo Masibi, and I'm not a lady, I'm a guy. But there is
and we are gender fluid, so don't be afraid.
I would like to ask Eusebius, since Dr. Nzimande is getting the bulk of the questions, and I will get to it. Eusebius, it seems you have a lot of critiques for all the political parties in this country, and rightfully so, because they all have a lot of flaws. What is your ideal version of a political party? And also, do you think the current political and economic situation we have, not just in South Africa, but worldwide, is it really benefiting people? Because people worldwide have issues. And I'd like to retort to our minister saying that the youth must go and fight like the youth of 76. Well, during Fees Must Fall, the police shot us at Vets and University.
Welcome to, I think those are young Communist League members and members of the Communist Party that are joining the movement. So just to acknowledge your presence, thank you for being here. We value it. Yes.
First of all, Minister, happy Freedom Day. I don't know how happy you're feeling after this debate is that you've been a punch bag for most of it. But, so I've got two questions, right? So this is my fifth election as a journalist, and the ANC has more or less the same message every single time. We've made gains, and what you need to do is to vote for the ANC so we truly experience freedom in this next election cycle. But the fact of the matter is that this never really materializes, and we're faced with the same debates every single election. And apologies if this comes across the wrong way, but perhaps the ANC and the government is served in this regard by gradually giving pieces of freedom to the South African citizenry and never really truly allowing them to experience freedom, because it would mean that there's a possibility you could lose power by doing so. And moreover, I just want to know, well, first of all, the question is there any merit to that argument? And then secondly, you're calling on everybody to take action, but you're a political office bearer, you are an elected official, you're a minister. What action are you taking in your personal capacity? Because when you're saying we need to stand by and watch for the action after the election, the same rules are being used to commit the same mistakes that have been made over the past quarter of a century. We're seeing millions of rands being spent on elected officials' houses while people are still living in poverty. And with respect, Minister, you used the exact same rules when you became a minister to make sure that you had a BMW as a state vehicle. So how can you call on the rest of the public to make these sacrifices and do the things you're calling on us to do when we see our elected officials, those with the ultimate political power, not taking those decisions themselves?
Good day to everyone. My name is Samuel. And I'd like to just say something about freedom, or give my personal definition of freedom. I believe it's the ability to truly express your needs and wants without any discrimination whatsoever. And I feel that the current state that we're in is only sort of centered for the middle class and upper class. There's sort of freedom that the panelists implied, actually. I feel that the sense of freedom that the upper and middle class are experiencing is not the same as the lower class, if I can say that. Yeah. Because as I go to school, I see people living in sort of different societies, different situations than those of the upper class. Because, okay, I visit my cousins and whatnot, and I'd say that he is in the middle class, upper middle class. And I see the differences between their lifestyles and ours. And I see the sort of freedom that they have compared to the freedom that I have back in the township. Because I'm from the township, I'm from the township school. I've been born and raised in the township. So I feel that there is, how can you truly sort of find a way to make that, to sort of create a sense of freedom for all people? Because I don't really need a smartphone in my school without knowing, if I go back home and I don't even use a phone, if I've never seen a phone in my life before, I don't really need better schools if no one in my community, better roads actually, if no one in my community has a car to drive. So can you sort of find a way to create not only freedom for those in the upper middle class, but those of us in the lower class. Thank you.
There's an excellent set of questions, and I think, to be fair on the Minister, I'd also like to throw the questions back at the audience. So if there's audience members that feel they want to answer some of the questions, please feel free. If there's audience members that want to give context to some of the things, then do that also, because we are now getting into the meaty stuff. We're getting into class politics, we're getting into the quality of our freedom, and we're getting into making a genuine assessment. We're beyond the point of making excuses or admitting. We are almost getting to the point where I'm going to direct the conversation to solutions forward, but we still in that final phase of making a proper diagnosis of what it is that the last 25 years has been about. So everybody can participate in the questions that have been asked. If you have a contribution to make, if you have a particular experience as a voter, as an educator, as a learner, as a factory worker, if your life has changed, tell us about it. If your life hasn't changed, tell us about it. So, because I think the point that the Minister is making, that I think a lot of you are missing, it's not, let's say the government did everything well. It's still not good enough, as far as I'm concerned. Because we mustn't outsource our responsibilities to politicians. We must be the leaders we want them to be. And so we are not passive recipients of development. So let's also ask ourselves tough questions. Let's also be self-critical about what it is that we do. Do we report theft when we work? Do we report a learner who crimps? Do we take the toilet paper because we don't have toilet paper at home and we think it's okay? So I want us to, as members of society, also engage with these complexities, because it is really important to do that, because change cannot happen through one agent alone. And that's not unique to South Africa, that's globally. And more importantly, to the young people who marched at Wits and who got bashed by the police, I think we've got every right to speak about the police brutality. But we can also ask you why you choose to burn down a library because you want a laboratory. We had the right to ask you that because you have the right to protest legally. When I protested, and I'm going to tell you how old I am, we didn't just get beaten up, we got put into prison. We got charged with public violence and put with common criminals. But I think the nature of the protests also need to be engaged. The way in which we understand what we can and can't do needs to be understood. So I'm asking everybody to dig a little deeper beyond the superficial hand clapping of the chorus, to dig a little deeper, because the conversation we're having here is fascinating, it's interesting, and it's complex. So let us also reflect that in the way in which we participate in this debate. Thank you. Over to you, Minister.
Yeah. First of all, Karima, let me start with the point that you made towards the end. And maybe link it to your service. Service, I'm a bit disappointed when you say, when I'm calling for civil society involvement. You say, therefore, I'm shifting everything to civil society. I'm going to monitor your radio shows. I don't want to hear you any one day talking about the role of civil society from today. Listen, you're saying civil society has no role. Changing a country is a partnership. Government has a role. We're not going to run away from it. And if civil society doesn't play its role, we are not going to make progress. You are right. Including, we didn't like to see the police chasing away the students. But Karima is right. I was in the heat of the FISMA's fall. I was the Minister of Education and Training. I can talk from experience. A very legitimate struggle. But my biggest disappointment with the generation of FISMA's fall was almost R1 billion worth of destruction of university property, including a brand new laboratory in Mafike. In the darkest days of apartheid, the ANC, under the leadership of Oliver Tambo, said, don't burn the schools because we will need those schools. We destroyed university property in a manner we have never done in the history of this country, ever. And student leadership, even those who were saying we were not responsible, they did not stand up to say, don't do it. In fact, there was like a fashionable populist thing with fees must fall. Because the students are right, therefore they can do anything to realize what their demand was. That was wrong and it must be condemned. And student leadership must condemn it. 1 billion rands almost worth of destruction of property. Totally unacceptable. But we want the role of civil society in Serbia. That is very important. Now, I also want to say that I do agree with the point on the tender system. As government already, we've started looking at how we actually address this. The president is very militant about this. We have to look into how the tenders in government operate in order to eliminate corruption. There is lots of corruption around tenders. So much more needs to be done, and we need to actually strengthen the laws, including the involvement of civil servants and their families in business with the state. It's illegal to do so. So we just need to get tougher. We hope now that with the strengthening under the current president's leadership of your criminal justice system, we're actually going to get to the bottom of that. That we are committed. I can speak as a communist now as well. When you say the banks are charging too high on home loans, I agree entirely with you. It's the compound system. They charge interest on interest. If you can buy a car and you pay for 60 months, why should you pay for a house for 20 years? And if you lose your job having paid for your house for 12 years, it gets taken away as if you haven't paid a cent. It's a struggle that we must wage. But you said, yes, that's the point I'm making. Civil society, that's why the Communist Party took the financial sector campaign as a campaign. Government changed because we were in the streets and actually saying the credit bureaus must be regulated, for instance. Civil society, we mobilize civil society. So it's very important. Nicholas, I think that may be the main message really I want to give. The fact that we have not done all that we want to do does not mean that nothing is happening. That's the problem I have, even with the approach that the ANC keeps on repeating. Why should we not repeat the issue of jobs if we still have a challenge of jobs? And we are trying to find new methods all the time to be able to do that. Over the last 5 to 10 years, we have made a lot of progress on infrastructure, for instance. We are not saying that there are still no schools in Soweto, for instance, as some of the learners were saying, that do not require attention. But the fact that we haven't achieved what we want does not mean that nothing is happening. The infrastructure over the last 10 years has made a world of difference. But government is saying now, going forward, we now need a dedicated infrastructure fund. And the ANC, the president has already put 100 billion rands. You don't touch it for anything, it's going to be for infrastructure. And we want to grow it. So that we say that money is exclusively reserved for infrastructure in the townships and the rural areas in the first place, where there is a lot that is behind. I do not have the time to be giving you all the figures. But you know, I think that someone raised there the issue that the situation in the township is very different from the suburbs. Of course, there's the issue that liberals dodge because they don't want to talk about class inequalities. To say there's a text, the two of us, you know. That's where we are right, Karima. Government can do everything that we are supposed to do in a society where the CEO of Checkers gets paid 200 million rands a year. And we are quiet. You don't hear noise in the media about this. 200, what do you do with 200 million rands? If you give me 200 million rands today, I wouldn't know what to do with that money. I wouldn't be able to count it to tell you how much it is being a Tabuza boy. But we are silent about it. When there are so many people who are actually starving, who is doing that? It's the corporates who are actually doing that. That is why the debate around corporate power and class inequalities is actually very important, and it should be at the center of everything. Yes, criticize the state, but also criticize it. By the way, you said this, well, we can have a further theoretical debate. The state does not have monopoly of power. I wish it had, in some instances. Maybe even it's not good that the state should have the monopoly of power, right? We do not. A lot of power lies in the corporates, for instance, which is economic power. That is where it actually lies, to the extent that it can even tell governments. That power can even tell governments what to do and to do things that are against ordinary people. We can't be silent about that. We do need, if we're silent about that, as you seem to be indicating that, then we're an apologist for exploitation. You are essentially saying exploitation is fine, all that is wrong is the ANC and government. We don't mind being criticized, but corporate power also we must actually put it into all this. Now, I think that maybe the last thing that I just want to say for this round, partnership with government is important. Yes, oppose government, but also where you can be able to partner is important. Young people have a big role to play. We are not saying do like 1976. The 1976 generation did what it did for its time, but we are also expecting the 2019 generation to do what is correct and what is needed for its own time now.
Okay, you serious?
Okay, I don't even know where to start, Karima. There's so much to say. Let me start firstly by echoing the Minister's sentiment, and it's definitely not condescending, Minister. I think you're spot on. It is wonderful to have this kind of political and intellectual complexity in a public debate, and it's not just happening in an academic journal somewhere. So in that vein, and that's also the reason why I asked Wade to not make me a moderator, so that I can actually play my role also as a student of philosophy and as a political commentator. So there's a couple of complex things I want to say, because there is complexity here. Karabo, to answer you, Karima has already answered you in part, actually, with her remarks before Dr. Nzimande responded this round. The role of the critic must not be misunderstood. I'm not in government. I could be in government. I sometimes thought of going into politics. When I came back from Oxford, I considered that option, and we can talk later, maybe after 5 o'clock, when we're mulling about why I think there's a disincentive for many young South Africans to join active politics. And I've always thought it enormously brave, even politicians I've disagreed with vehemently in my still fairly young career as a broadcast and analyst, Lindiwe Mazibuko, one of them, to actually go into the lion's den. It is a very empty intellectual space. There's no tolerance for disagreement in all the major parties. Can you imagine how long your CVs would last in the EFF, in the ANC, or even in the DA? I wouldn't last 5 minutes, right? So there's a reason I'm a critic, but the critic plays an important role in society. We're not here simply to be chihuahuas. We are here to do what Karima said, which is to properly conceptualize the nature and the scope of what we have to deal with. And the best analysts are the ones who are not looking for retweets, but the ones who are prepared to say to the public, stay with me, I will use language and praxis and tools that are slightly complex, but in the service of a more just and equal society. This is my role as the critic. That's why most of the questions are going to him. On the more substantive issues, I'm just going to tackle 2 or 3, because I'd really love to have another round or 2 from you before we close at 5 o'clock. Minister, you keep talking about liberals, so let me give you something to play with, Shay, because everyone's attacking you. Let me make a positive defense of liberalism. I think the longer version will have to do in the communist online pamphlet. Maybe you and I can have a series of written pieces doing a dialectic on liberalism. You ask, if we go into the solution space already a little bit, what would I rather do? Not much, to be honest, because I think that the liberal constitution, and I thank the communists at Odessa for signing up for a liberal constitution, the liberal constitution has got a perfect normative framework. We wouldn't have half of this debate today if the government simply complies with the law. So all I want is actually compliance with what has already been agreed to as the appropriate vision for our country. The ANC's policies, one can make marginal differences to. I'm beginning to come around to some Marxist critiques of capitalism, and if you accept some of those, then you need more than a marginal critique of the ANC's economic policies, which I'll talk about in a second. But by and large, our policies are pretty decent. Anyone who's read the various IPAPs, who has spent 5 minutes with the Minister of Economic Development, will know that the ideas are fine. The normative vision is fine. I don't have solutions for you. What we need are men and women seconded into the state to get on with it, to not steal and to comply. So here's the thing, Minister, about liberalism. At its core, and I'm not self-hating as a poor colored guy from Makanda, but at its core, liberalism is something that every poor black person should sign up for. There are different kinds of liberalism. I am what the literature refers to as a liberal egalitarian. I'm a liberal who thinks that freedom matters if it is in service of equality. Liberalism can be married with a deep commitment to structural analysis. The idea that only the South African Communist Party can possibly care for class analysis is bull dust. We also have the intellectual tools as liberals to critique the shortcomings of corporate South Africa. Here's another thing, and it's a pity that the cameras are off, because there's another opportunity for the DA to get nervous when I critique them. There are very few liberals in the DA leadership. Busi Maimane is not a true liberal. There are very few social democrats and social liberals in the leadership of the DA. The DA would do better amongst black voters if they were my kind of liberal. So when we talk liberal, what Blade means by liberal is white people. That's what it means by liberal. What Blade means by liberal is the DA voter. It doesn't actually mean the stuff that he's committed to when he wears his hat as an academic with a PhD, which is, he knows that if this was in the academy, he would have to ask me a follow-up before he can critique me. He would have to ask me, Eusebius, what do you mean by liberalism? Unpack that for me definitionally so that I can make sure we're not having a verbal debate, that I'm actually talking about the content of your belief structure before I make assumptions about what that label means. He doesn't ask me in the public debate because he wants to help himself to a public assumption that liberalism in the context of South African political history just means Helen Suzman. That's not the kind of liberal that I am. And in fact, one of the reasons why I struggle to have the DA on the short list of parties that I might vote for is precisely because as a liberal egalitarian, the DA is not a natural home for someone like Eusebius. So we need to have a long debate about liberalism, just as you hate it when I malign Marxism. And then the last substantive issue I want to deal with is this idea of civil society. Dr. Nzimande, and if there are any young high school debaters here, or the ones that were with me in a workshop last year, you know that one of the bad ways to reason is to misdescribe your opponent's position. Okay? We want to have a bunch of honest debaters in the South African public space. The best way to win an argument is to be kind to the person that you are debating and accurately, and even better than they are doing, describe what they are saying before you critique it. I never once said that civil society doesn't have responsibilities. I never once said that corporate should be spared. I attack corporates every day. Why do you think that my bosses at Prime Media gets nervous when I speak behind the mic? Because the corporates that have to advertise with us hate my critiques of corporates. Civil society is not spared. I've lost some friends in the civil society sector for critiquing their misogyny, their homophobia, their lack of support for women who work in civil society organizations. Civil society matters. I'm an agnostic. Even the church matters for an agnostic as an important part of civil society. And the generous interpretation, which someone rightly corrected me on, of the president going last week and saying to churches, keep us honest, isn't that it was an attempt at buying votes, but the president was rightly, and I'm ceding ground here, but I'm not ceding it, Minister. You and I obviously agree on this. The president was right because he was tapping into a history of civil society playing a critical role in building a just South Africa. I'm not blind to any of that. But here's the last thing I want to say. The problem for you is, when you talk about partnership, is that you have the wrong kind of partnership with corporates. Capitalism, to answer Karabo's last question, is broken. I finally come around to Karima's view on this. And this is where maybe the policies must be revisited. I don't think capitalism has delivered justice. What we have in South Africa is not a socialist economy, it's not a Marxist economy. Blade as a communist shouldn't be happy with our economic policies. What we have is capitalism plus 70 million people on drugs. That's what we have. Capitalism is broken and it hasn't delivered justice. So we do need to rethink, what are we going to do about capitalism?
At last, you said.
Absolutely, but here's the point. The reason why I can critique capitalism is because liberalism has got the tools to do so. If you have capitalism that is rampant, my individual freedom, which is the most important value of liberalism, is undermined. I care about diminishing capitalism's power because I know that if the capitalists have too much power, then my individual freedom is undermined. So there's a liberal justification for going after MTN and Vodacom. And that's where there's no contradiction in what I'm saying. But the last thing I want to say is that the state capture years is a wonderful example of why Blade can't say to you and me, why aren't you critiquing the corporates? Because you know what? The corporates and the ANC are the same WhatsApp group.
Yeah. Audience, I'm just reminding you, it's 4:45. Like I said, we have to be very disciplined. It needs to be 5. So we've got 15 minutes. So I'm going to take 2 rounds, but we need to be shorter with our comments or with our questions. And if you have 2 questions, please just give me 1 so that another person can. So I'm going to take 2 rounds. So I've got a big Ramaphosa fan sitting here with a t-shirt, so he's going to get an opportunity. We've got the gentleman over here, and then right at the back, the lady with the red today, she's going to get an opportunity, and then you've had a chance, so I'm going to take the gentleman with the glasses over there. There we go. Can we just get the mic to work, please?
Thank you, Chairperson. My question is directed to Comrade Blade Nzimande. I'm calling him Comrade, not Minister. Yeah, it's that, as we know that in South Africa now, there are huge inequalities in South Africa than compared to other countries in the world because of our past history. And the economy is highly skewed, our economy. Where we find that most black people via their parties control the political landscape, but the economy is still controlled by the white minority in this country via their companies. So the solution to eradicate all these inequalities that we're experiencing in this country was number 1 in the world, What would be the solution? Must we reform the BEE, or must we go for nationalization, or because this is a problem that still up to now create inequalities, racism. It comes from those backgrounds. Our economy is highly skewed. Inequalities are caused by that. Thank you, Chairperson.
Okay, I have an answer for you, but I'll wait till everybody's finished. And that's not the answer that you think you want.
Good afternoon, thank you very much. My name is Franklin. Happy Freedom Day to everyone. 25 years ago today, I was in the northern areas of Port Elizabeth making my vote and casting my vote there. And when I walked home, I was reminded about the triple challenge of unemployment, poverty, and inequality. 25 years after that day today, I realized there's a 4th challenge, which is corruption. And if we couldn't get rid of the 3 challenges over 25 years of unemployment, poverty, and inequality, I don't know how we're going to deal with the 4th challenge that we're facing now after 25 years. So I just want to find out from the Minister and the CBS and everyone else, how we're going to deal with this 4th challenge that we encountered now after 25 years.
Thank you very much for that question.
It's an orange berets. I don't want to get confused with another organization. My name is Snowy Matera. I happen to be a tourist guide, so history is very close to my heart. I talk history to people who visit from other countries, to people in our own country. People often ask me, why is history not a compulsory subject? Minister Blade, you were Minister of Education for almost 20 years. Minister of Higher Education from 2009 to 2018, you were a minister. Surely you could have made influence. Germany, with its past bad past history, Nazism, made history a compulsory language so that their generations to come could understand the pain, the disgust that Nazism brought to the people. If our country, if our children, white children, all the children study history, they will not think us mad when we become mad.
Hello. Thank you. My name is Norman Brown, and I'm not family of yours. I know that I'm not family of yours. I think the concern that I'm having is that there is this question that we want to see, the presidential debate. And it seems like we need to ask the president of the ANC to debate. I would challenge the ANC to put up the stage and call the presidents of the 3-4 parties that are very important.
Don't worry, we can't get it right. The president of the ANC is not available.
No, let me finish. I'm saying put up the stage. And if they don't come, that will show how important we are today. So that when the people are there to debate, and I think I must also take the part of Eusebius. The problem that I'm having is that if you're going to have Mr. Imani debating in the absence of the president, he will complain more than trying to put his view as from the DA. And in terms of the DA, the only problem that I'm having with Musi, when I have to sit with Blade Mzimane and we have to go to the location and we sit somewhere, I will say, Blade, hey, you know this coconut lady of us. So I'm just making a joke, so don't take it serious. So the point I'm making is that there are things that we have done. And it's very disappointing to see at this stage that we are still trying to debate issues that we were supposed to be benefiting from. Right? Mr. Blade Mzimane, you are the person of transport.
Yeah.
And if you're going to make it into the next elections, which is very problematic because if you're going to have a coalition, we'll have another 20 years of problems. If you're going to be the transport minister, make sure within the next 3 years, a lady who earns 1,000 rand will only use 100 rand for a whole month to make sure she gets to work. Those are simple analysis. The last thing that I want to say to you, this debate is such of intellect, and I'm not a guy who's got a master's or PhD, I'm an NQF person, NQF5. But it seems like the debate in a hall actually doesn't take us forward. So therefore, I think your influences when the ANC is asking for this presidential debate, and maybe after your rally, let's have that debate and see what we can do. And that's the challenge I do for you. So those are the things that I just wanted to say. Thank you.
Is 7 minutes to 5. Minister, I'm going to give you 5 minutes, and then I'm going to give you this the rest, and then we'll wrap up.
Okay. Thank you. By the way, let me just quickly say this to Eusebius. You know, one of the key requirements to make progress in any country is national unity and social cohesion. Without the ANC, this country would have been in blood and in trade. One single biggest achievement of the ANC has been to maintain national unity, especially the majority. Many other countries who have got tribal and ethnic warfare because of the leadership of the ANC and its frontal confrontation against those kinds of prejudices. We can complain that we are not where we want to be, but that is a very important platform to build upon. Therefore, the ANC cannot by any means be characterized as anti-black. Just for that. Because we've had a taste of that. I grew up in KZN. I've had a taste for being ANC, of being told that you are closer because you are ANC if you are in KZN by a particular political organization which is trying to turn itself today into having been a wonderful organization that actually struggled with us. So we must appreciate that. And it's only the ANC that is capable of actually doing that. So I just thought that Karima, I need to say that. Secondly, I want to say, by the way, that young people must go and vote because it's your future. If you don't go and vote, other people are going to decide what kind of country you are going to have. I thought that I didn't answer that question. That's the main reason for me why you must go and vote. Voting is crucial because it determines who and how the country is going to be run. So it's very important that you do that because it's for your future. Of course, you have a choice who to vote for. If you ask me, I'll say go and vote for the ANC, obviously. But voting is very important because it is actually for your future. For me, you said this, we don't have time to debate this currently. The problem with liberalism is that it does not problematize the structure of power in society. DA is a particular type of liberalism, you say, but all liberals, there is something common. Give everybody an equal opportunity, even if there isn't equal opportunity. And you don't problematize that actually the structure of power and the structure of society determines those opportunities. But we can debate that at some other stage. I do agree with you, by the way, that's a very constructive thing. I'm happy to take the debate after the elections. I'm not debating because we are going to the elections. I'm more than happy, Karina, anytime. You say yes, no, so at least we agree on that. He invites me anytime. If I have time, I go and debate because you are right, Eusebius, where we agree. There is a dangerous trend of anti-intellectualism emerging in our country. Like the thing of banning books and actually disrupting book launches and so on is the worst thing that we can actually do. It's anti-intellectual. The fact that you disagree with the book does not mean you must go and ban it. So it's very important. I agree with corruption. We are agreed now. We really are only hoping that, that's why also we need partnership with civil society. Because government is not everywhere all the time, but ordinary people are everywhere all the time. They can see what is happening so that we are able to work together to actually defeat. The scourge of corruption constitutes a threat even to all these things that I've actually mentioned that we actually need to do. We will be making history compulsory, by the way, in the next few years at school. It has to be compulsory because if we don't tell our history, we're in trouble, as I've actually said. I would have added the fifth scourge that's facing us, which is particularly violence against women. That we actually need. Again, it's a struggle that as government, we can do a lot, but on our own, we are not going to defeat that unless there is partnership with what we call civil society. Thanks very much.
All right, thank you, Minister. Let's give it up.
I just need 3. I'm going to make 5 unrelated points in closing. Since I'm not moderating, I'm not going to worry about summating. And these are ongoing debates and ongoing issues. Despite that fact, I think we can praise ourselves for what has been a fantastic 2 hours, even if we haven't pursued everything to its end. I think there's been substantive intellectual engagement over the last 2 hours. Point number 1, the minister's logic doesn't quite add up. He rightly states a premise that is true, but his conclusion doesn't follow from it. He says that the ANC doesn't get enough credit implied, and I agree with that, Minister, for how it has held the country together and still does. National unity and social cohesion. And then he concludes, based on that premise, that therefore, on that fact alone, the ANC cannot be described as anti-work. The 2 statements have got nothing to do with each other. It's like saying 1 + 1 is 2, therefore the ANC is pro-women. The one statement must logically entail the second one, and then you have a good argument. The only thing that follows from the ANC's role in terms of national unity and social cohesion is that the ANC has been good for national unity and for social cohesion. An open question is, how has social cohesion served justice for black people? How has national unity helped people whose lives are ruined when we have torrential rains in Joburg because of structures that cannot withstand it? So there's a massive difference between the importance of not having internecine warfare and pretending that therefore you are pro-black. I'm not glib about social cohesion, but let's not define social cohesion as justice for black people. I can't get through all of the other points, so I'll just take the most important one. I want to echo what Dr. Nzimande is saying. Not voting is irrational, not because you have faith in any of the main parties, but because not voting does not make you immune to the power that politicians have or become the government of the day. If you don't like any of the parties because they don't fit your ideal blueprint for society, go and vote and ask yourself a different question: who's the least bad? And vote for them. Second last point. The 8 on liberalism not problematizing power. All I'm going to say in this is, I know the minister will take me up on the challenge. We'll have a full debate in another forum on liberalism. He is confusing liberalism with a different political doctrine called libertarianism. And unfortunately, in the Democratic Alliance, there are many libertarians. I don't have time for them. There are very few liberals. Liberals of my kind, Francis Antoni, a few others in the odd think tank here and there, we totally get power. And we know how power can reintroduce inequalities in societies in a way that doesn't make sense. I can see the gentleman in red disagree. You can come and debate it with me. I'm well versed in liberalism, and I'm also well versed in what I don't like about libertarianism. You conflate two different concepts. But I want to end with a very important request. Please do not end this debate for yourself with an examination of state power. Ask yourself, what power do I have at work, at home, in the gym, in Woolies? How am I using or not using that power? And if I am fluent, by way of one example to end with, as a man, in the language of feminism, what did I do when I heard the catcalling, or when I was silent in the locker room and I heard misogyny?
Wasn't answered. I said I was going to answer your question. And it's a simple thing. When we examine what we did wrong and what policies we took that perhaps got us nowhere, the one policy that we never want to examine is the creation of a so-called patriotic bourgeoisie, a black patriotic bourgeoisie. It is nonsense. It is changing blackness into a commodity that allows for fronting. It is the main reason why we're not in the economy. Actually in the economy. Because let me tell you, governments come and go, but the state remains. And that is actually the issue. Because the ANC is in power, but is it the state? And that hopefully can be the next debate. Because we need to look at the fact that most of the people who benefited from that deracialization of the so-called economy was a few black people tied to the African National Congress. I have never seen an ANC government march or write a letter to a bank to say, save this business in Kailicha. But they did it for the Guptas, right? So that's what we must ask ourselves. We must ask, why did we trade free education for the creation of a black patriotic bourgeoisie, most of whose accountants signed off on the corruption in all the state-owned companies? The black middle class must accept their role in the complicity of that. The trade unions, like the communication workers union at the SABC, must accept complicity for the fact that the SABC is corrupt when they stood with Claudi against media freedom. Nobody must take responsibility for dancing when the person who committed the fourth sin, corruption, came back, Brian Olivier, and danced and clapped, but then wanted a 9% increase from a bankrupt Eskom. We need to take responsibility for the state of our society wherever we are at. Those of you who don't go to your ward meetings because you're not interested, can't blame the ward councillor for making a decision that doesn't benefit you. Governance requires action, not just from government, but from us, because at the end, you know, I had to school the DG of Mineral Affairs. He's talked about our people all the time. So I said, no, DG, they're not your people, they're not children, they are the people. But you are our government. You serve as our people. So that's
some people in the ANC were selling out to the Guptas, not the whole of the African nation.
Thank you very much. There's levels to eat. I'm just going to invite from the Apartheid Museum to do a final vote of thanks. Mr. Nzimande, thank you so very much for your time and generosity, but also listening to young people, taking back hopefully this back to your cabinet members, to the Central Committee of the party. Thank you for the YCL to be here, thank you for the youth, and also the ordinary members of the community, the history guy who begs the question. History shouldn't be taught at university, it must be taught in primary school. Yes. That is the problem. We have GBSs that they decide history doesn't have to be taught. And that we need to sort out. And that's Minister Motshekga's problem. So we have to tackle her on that one. Thank you very much, everyone.
I'd like to say thank you to Karima Brown for moderating.
Just hold on for 1 second, guys. Can we please just listen to the Deputy Director before she speaks, by the way? Can we give her a round of applause for being the one?
I would like to thank Karima Brown for moderating this beautiful session. I'd like to thank Minister Blaine Nzimande for coming out and sharing his insight with us. We know how busy you are at this time, Minister, so thank you very much. It's really appreciated. I'd like to thank the CBS. CBS has been with us over, I think, 4 years now with these sessions, and it's always been an absolute delight to have him as a moderator, and this time as a debater, it's absolutely amazing. Thank you. I want to thank the schools for bringing the learners today. Yes. But I don't want to forget, I forget it every single time. I want to thank my colleagues who are with me every single time we have these events, who go out of their way, who leave their particular positions to come and help us. And this is very successful one. Thank you, Talani. I want to thank B-Star Media, our media people, for always being around, for filming and videographing the session and placing it onto our social media. Mostly, I want to thank all of you for coming and sharing this day with us. Thank you.